Hi everyone, Sean here. In this episode, we have Roland Ferris and Navah Horomona inviting us into the world of Maoridom. We get a glimpse of Maori cultural values, beliefs and practices, and the connection to both the natural and spiritual realms. As an extension to some of the principles of Te Maori, our conversation also delves into religion, spirituality and connectedness.
A higher consciousness and awareness of the true divine self within. A lot of those teachings, when the missionaries first arrived, they were to pull all these carvings down around your meeting houses because that's worshipping idols, but it wasn't. That's the way we wrote. It was all symbolism, symbolic.
That's where you can see the lack. There's a lack in light, there's a lack in happiness, there's a lack in purpose.
Guys, thanks very much for joining me. We tried to set this up for a few weeks, but things happened. So glad to finally have you both on board. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Good. Welcome.
All right, so I'll just lay a bit of background for the listeners and the viewers. So we, especially yourself, Roland, and I met you at an event that you run. So it's Kurawaka Tapu is the event. Nav actually introduced me to that event the week before. So everything just lined up. But going back to Kurawaka, can you just explain what that is, what it means?
Sure. Kurawaka Tapu, when the word is broken down, like I mentioned at the wānanga, they use the word kura in today's language for school. But kura, it actually means kura, precious. Ura is the colour of blood, which is blue before it's oxygenated. So kura waka is a vessel, whether that vessel is a canoe or whether it's a wakahuia where you put your ornaments and things in. So when the word is put together, kurawaka is actually referring to the womb of a woman. That's the only way we all come here, is through the womb and the mana of a woman. And tapu actually means, they say the word tapu means sacred today. But where I come from, and it is sacred, ta means the spiritual blueprint, the DNA. And pu means the essence. So the essence of life is organised in the mother's womb. That is the essence, the DNA, which links us to God, a God being. So that's what Kurawaka Tapu is all about.
That's beautiful. So I've been to one event. I mean, I took so much away from the few hours I spent with you guys. What's interesting is that there's such a strong spiritual message that you're conveying. When you spoke at that event, it was very much into relating to us guys, where we fit in the big picture, which I think is a very important topic to discuss because so many men today are lost, I feel. Don't quite know where they fit in. Not just in the family unit, but also in general. I think the goalposts have changed in terms of how men see themselves or how men think they should fit in. And they haven't found the new goalposts yet. But before we get into that spiritual aspect of things, so you both are from Mormon background.
Yes.
Yeah. So was that let's start with you now. Like we had a brief chat off air about spirituality and religion, where so many people, it's commonplace to see the two as separate. You know, when I embraced spirituality, like I said offline, a lot of people thought I was turning my back on God, and it couldn't be furthest from the truth. You know, it's completely the opposite for me. How was that transition? Did you see it as a transition, like from your strong religious upbringing to then shift to a more spiritual existence, I guess?
The transition was quick because of my religious upbringing. I didn't actually have to figure a lot of things out. I only had to rewire them. I only had to rethink them, reimagine them. Growing up in church, it gave me an external example of what it all meant, what life was supposed to be about. And when I had my so-called spiritual awakening, all I did was take all those lessons I learned and flip them inwards, flip them on an introspective concept or understanding. God is out there, now God is in here. And that was how fast the transition was. It took me about 2 weeks to integrate that.
Wow.
To integrate that mindset. And for about 2 weeks, I felt like I was floating on clouds,
Yeah.
because my mind was reteaching itself, rewiring itself. And ideas, scriptures, teachings in the church, all flooding back into my memory. But it was teaching me to look at it from a different perspective. It took about 2 weeks for that process to happen for me.
2 weeks is quick.
It was quick.
And I now that you've explained it, I understand it.
Yeah.
Like there was no conflict. There's no conflicting ideas. It was just, like you said, a recalibration or a rewiring of ideas that were already there.
So I'm
not ideas, but beliefs.
I'm grateful for that religious upbringing because it bypassed all that having to fight against religion and spirituality. It actually gave me the basis of what I needed. And that's how I look at it.
I mentioned the word conflict. Was there any, did it change your perspective on religion as an institution?
Yeah, it did. Because growing up in church, you think that your religion is the one true religion that everyone needs to know about. But what I understood after all of it was that religion is a school. That's all it is. It's a school on this planet, and this planet is a celestial kingdom. And so it is a school within a school. But it's like a really hard school because you intentionally come down as a spirit to, in a sense, get brainwashed. And it's in that brainwashing, it's not necessarily brainwashing, but it's intentional so that you can learn faster. You can learn more deeper lessons.
Yeah. So was that the impetus? Was that the seed that prompted you to want to grow or start Kurawaka?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah. A higher consciousness and awareness of the true divine self within. That part of you that the scriptures talk about being created in the image and likeness of God.
Yeah. Now you, and it still sits with me. And when you said it during that event, during that evening, and I can't think of the Maori words now, but I think it roughly translates to God is me, I am God.
Yes. O, e io, io, ao. The letters are A, E, I, O, U.
Yeah,
which is what
the vowels.
The vowel sounds which the English taught. This is what you need to understand concerning language. A, E, I, O, U.
Yeah.
Now, in the world of Maoridom, it was A, U, O, E, which means presently, Io, which is the supreme God. So I am God. Io, O, God is me.
And the reason why that resonated so strongly with me is when I started embracing spirituality, or not embracing, or understanding spirituality more, I should say, was coming to that realization that, because my conditioning, I'll use that word, my religious conditioning was that, God was out there and I had to keep reaching and, followed certain rules.
Proving yourself.
To reach, proving myself worthy. Exactly. So it always seemed to me like this existential being that I need to keep reaching for. But as I became more aware, that's exactly what dawned on me is that it's all right here. Like I am what I'm looking for.
Yes.
Already, it's not out there. So the Maori culture is very rich in spirituality. Am I correct in saying that? Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I call classical Te Ao Maori, which was taught, on those waka that came to New Zealand, or on those canoes that came to New Zealand, they brought with them a very deep and rich esoteric learning. That's what they brought with them. Hence, o e io, io e o. I am God, God is me. And that's the type of understanding that they had. Okay? Now, when they got to Aotearoa, or New Zealand, okay, and the English arrived, a lot of those teachings, when the missionaries first arrived, they were to pull all these carvings down around your meeting houses because that's worshipping idols, but it wasn't. That's the way we wrote. It was all symbolism, symbolic. Okay? And when we understand how to read symbolism, it's all parabolic, metaphorical analogies, allegories, that type of language, which the English world was not comfortable with. The English world likes everything black and white, on the table, straight answers, please. I don't want to have to really think about, different levels of understanding.
Yeah.
And so when the missionaries came in and all those things were pulled down and meeting houses were burnt to the ground and everything else, a lot of that old teaching was lost. And so you have this very large window where my ancestors, my grandparents weren't allowed to speak Maori at school. So, everything was taken from them. And they eventually were able to, and eventually, in the 70s, 80s, were they able to, allowed to restart Maori schools so that they could learn the language. However, the problem I see, was that it was a whole different language.
Was there something that you found? Was it anything you found missing in religion that you were searching for that caused that transition, or caused you to want to embrace spirituality more?
I was reluctant to have a change in belief because I was invited to events before, breathwork events. Breathwork, that's demonic stuff. That's how I thought. Meditation, not allowed to ponder.
Yeah.
Better not be pondering.
Yeah.
But what it lacked was the excitement of existence. Because in religion, you tick all the boxes and then you get stuck. Once you get to the final checklist, you're married, you got the kids, you got the house and whatever. Once all those are checked, now what? You just go to church, take your sacrament, go serve people, and you do that till the day you die. Like, what kind of existence is that? But perceiving that potential future for myself, I knew that that's not how life is meant to be.
Yeah.
So I knew that religion was lacking something from that perspective, because I can perceive that a lot of these people at church who are older than me and been doing this perpetual cycle over and over and for years and years, I know they're not happy. You can see it in their face. You can see it in their demeanor.
Body language and everything.
Absolutely.
They're just not happy.
Yeah.
And so it was that. That's where you can see the lack. There's a lack in light. There's a lack in happiness. There's a lack in purpose.
Yeah.
And one may be fulfilled within themselves to do those things. I don't.
That does make a lot of sense. For me, it was really, I got to the point where I was questioning why I needed to keep having to prove myself worthy, like having to follow these strict rules and doctrines to prove myself, And if I didn't follow those, I'd be made to feel guilty or there was a lot of fear-mongering, I think. There's a lot of fear attached to. So I was raised Anglican, Church of England, but there was, if you don't do this, then you'll go to hell. And if there's a lot of fear and guilt and shame within that institution that I'm like, well, is this what it's about? Like, is God this strict?
Yeah.
My beliefs was firm, but I thought there was something amiss. there was something not quite right, which is why. So it's not a case of turning my back on anything. It's just, like we said before, rewiring those beliefs, you know.
A guru actually said, when I went on my journey to find God, I found myself. When I found myself, I found God. And really, that's how simple it is.
Yeah.
But religion makes it so dogmatic. You got to do this, do that, follow that, keep this commandment, keep that commandment. Nobody's ever kept all the commandments, you know. But like you say, you know, we're taught through fear, judgment, you know, that God is a loving, kind, merciful, graceful God, and he's angry and vengeful and going to send you to hell for all eternity. That's what didn't make sense to me. To me, that sounded like a schizophrenic God, to be honest with you.
That's a fair assessment. That's a fair comment. That's fair.
And that's what sent me on my journey. But I went back to my roots, because in the scriptures it tells me that God gave everything that everybody needs to know, every kindred, tongue, nation and people. He gave it to them in their own language. So I went back to find, well, where is it in my language? Where is it in my culture? And I found it.
Mm. You know, when I at the start of the chat, I mentioned men and where they seem to have lost their way. And I'm talking from my experiences, you know, from my clients, and especially young men. They don't really know where they fit in. They feel kind of disconnected. So that brings me to what you did previously. So you did a lot of work within the prison system.
Yes.
Conveying this message, is that right? Like teaching this spiritual aspect. And to be fair, you address some evil people, killers, like hardcore killers, you know, and rapists and hardcore people.
Mm.
Were they receptive to what you had to say?
Some of them, you know, found it difficult because you actually have to go within. You have to go within. You have to look at your own actions. You have to learn to be responsible for your own actions. You know? And when we look at the word responsibility, it's the ability to respond. And what they're doing, or what they've been doing all their lives, is reacting. There's a difference between responding and reacting.
Absolutely.
Mm. So they, like you said, you know, they were killers, murderers, you know, and done some terrible things.
Mm.
But once we'd get through, because we used to, you know, a 3-day wānanga with them, meaning we'd live in there with them for those 3 days, 3 nights, and we'd teach nothing but the tikanga, which means true and correct principles. We'd teach them all about themselves. We'd teach them, once you learn about yourself, now you can look at your wife or your partner differently. Now you can look at your parents differently. Now you can look at your neighbours differently when you understand who you are. Yeah. And to be honest with you, you know, many men, hardened men, break down, cry once they realised who they were. They'd come out of those prisons, different men. And my program dealt with those who no other program provider wanted to deal with. So we took on the mongrel mob, the black power, the headhunters, everything else. No other program provider wanted to touch them.
And that's the point I'm trying to make, is like what I'm seeing, the pattern that I'm seeing with a lot of these guys that I'm speaking with, and the reason why they seem to have lost their way is because they haven't found the way to themselves. They're disconnected from themselves first and foremost, because they're still looking outward for the answers. Like, I want to find out who I am and where I fit in, but the answer's kind of out there somewhere. So they still have that mindset. So, yeah, to trying to turn that mirror to face them, so they can, so they can actually reflect. It's okay, there's my answer, you know, because at the moment it's kind of pointing outwards, searching. that was the point I was trying to make. And we spoke before off air about conditioning and upbringing and things like this. So disconnection for guys, and I don't want to make this a guy-girl thing, but because girls feel disconnected as well in their upbringing in terms of where they fit in. But when it comes to behavioural patterns, I think a lot of those behavioural patterns are picked up in childhood conditioning.
Absolutely.
We grow up in a let's take the example we used off air as let's say you grow up in a violent household. It's obviously going to pick up those behavioural patterns and see them as normal.
That becomes the norm.
Now let's go to these prisoners that you addressed. They're not bad people necessarily. They're just people who've done bad things, and the reason they've done bad things is because they've lost their way. Like they don't have direction. They've been conditioned wrong from the start. It's not their true self. They've just been conditioned that way. In my policing days, I was in the counter-terrorism space, and I found a lot of these guys become radicalised, not because they're born terrorists or their beliefs sort of are that strong that they want to be terrorists. It's just they are disenfranchised. They're lost. And these extremists then prey on that. Say, okay, you're lost. Don't have a purpose. We'll give you a purpose now. We'll make you feel purposeful. This is your calling, basically. And they become conditioned that way. They start believing that narrative. So this whole early conditioning plays a massive, massive role in the path we take. But Maori culture being so rich in spirituality, do you think there's a disconnect from that?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
You know, I've talked about this before, where there was the first time Maori was allowed to be spoken on TV, and it was the news. And in Maori we call it te karere, which means the message or news. And so for 10 minutes there was a news slot all in Māori. However, my grandparents and that generation and the generation could not understand what they were speaking about on TV.
Wow.
They couldn't understand it. So I always say there's the classical reo and there's this new wave reo that my ancestors or my grandparents could not understand. So there's this disconnection from the true Maori language and the culture and the tikanga to this modern day stuff that's taught in universities, which are all English based. Māoris go in there, they get a job, they become a professor of their own Māori language, but they are taught you must teach it this way. The classical language was always spoken in parables, because parables, as we read in the Bible, I saw something very interesting on a post just the other day, that all Indigenous peoples that are connected to the land and to nature, they all speak in parables, because that's the language of the spirit. When a parable is given, depending on what level of understanding you're at, you'll get a different message to the next person.
How about you, Nav? Like with growing up in the Mormon church, is it fair to say what you were learning in terms of Maori culture, it's still tip of the iceberg, or you're still learning, or you feel that you've completely embraced it?
Oh, I'm definitely still learning.
Still learning, yeah.
It's deep.
And that's what I love about it. It's deep and it's rich, you know. That's why I've fallen in love with it so much, yeah. And are you finding it easy or challenging to reconcile the two?
Oh, no, it's easy to reconcile. It's just a matter of desire. How much you desire something is how much you will retain. How much you want it is how much you're going to get.
You know, some of the spiritual teachings, you alluded to this before, you touched on it earlier, you know, when you talked about meditation and yoga and stuff like that, they would, especially the Catholic Church, would write that off as demonic, and yoga poses are devil worshipping and things like this. So I feel that this is my take on it. The message the church delivers is correct, but it's kind of spiced up a little bit. You know, like with demons, for example, they would portray demons as these ungodly figures with, you know, red eyes and horns and and actual beings. Whereas in the spiritual world, yeah, demons are very much there when you say you've got to confront your demons and face your demons, but you're not facing an actual being. You're facing something internally. Yes. You're facing your own shadows. How that manifests for you, if you conjure up an image of these horns, and that's okay. That's fine, but a demon is a vibration, like it's just a lower vibrational energy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's my take on it. So the message that the church delivers, it's right, but it's
manipulated.
It's manipulated, yeah.
To keep control of the masses. Because if I can get you to be afraid of something and I tell you I'm the one that's got the answer, come.
And that's what I mean, like everything was so external, like I had to keep reaching and relying on others to find the answers for myself, whereas the answers are right here. And you said, your willingness to embrace it, it's all on you. It's how open your heart is to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to put out a negative perception, you'll keep getting that back.
That's right.
It'll just keep reflecting. The world, it really is an external reflection of
oneself,
of who we are, exactly. And it'll keep being that until you change what's happening inside. Yeah. Nothing external is going to change. You can't expect the world outside to change so that you can change internally. Yes. It's the other way around.
And that's what most people want.
Yeah.
They want something out there to change so that I can feel better about myself or change within myself.
Exactly.
But it's not that way. That's never going to happen.
It's never going to happen that way, yeah.
Sean, I was a big study of Scripture, growing up all my life. And when I'd come across scriptures like, but the anointing which ye have received of him abideth in you, and ye need not that any man teach you. But as the anointing teacheth you of all things, and is all truth, and is no lie, as it hath taught you, ye shall abide in him. So when I'd come across scripture like that, I'm looking at it and thinking, this is introspective, this is internal. It's not external. You've got to look within yourself. And so that sort of started me on my journey, to look at my conditioning as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to look at it. And the best way that you can find truth is that you've got to look at the conditioning and see if you can prove the conditioning right. If you can't prove it right, then you better look elsewhere.
The relationships you had, like with friends, and when you started not questioning but transitioning into a more spiritual existence, did that affect a lot of your relationships or any of your friendships? Or because it certainly did for me. So I'm just interested to hear your take on it.
Pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
Even my love relationship, and my family don't get it. Probably only a few of my brothers, but I've got 8 brothers. But only probably 2 of them get it. My parents don't get it. My friends don't get it. I've had some friends say you're going to hell. It affects you as much as you let it. But if you see it with conscious understanding, this is how it's meant to be. This is how it goes. Consider the life of Christ. He was betrayed by all his friends, left alone. And it was only him alone on that cross. And when one takes the path of learning to become the Christ, they go on the Christ journey. Jesus was simply the representation of what it means to be the Christ. And when we figure out, when he says, I and my Father are one, I'm in him, he's in me, we are in you, he's simply saying, you are Christ. And when you jump on this Christ journey with me, when you realize and remember who you are, the life that I am living now, Jesus, is the path of the Christ. And the Christ simply follows the will of the Father. That's all it does. I do the will of the Father. What he says, that's my commandment. That's what I go and do.
Yeah.
And so to expect betrayal in your life is to be expected.
Yeah.
And to see it with that kind of understanding, it takes away the emotions from it.
That's a really important point you make there. Like people would get to the point where they reach that awareness, but then having the courage to, I mean, for you, like I said, for you to explore spirituality in its real essence, away from the church would have been a very courageous step. And a lot of people, when they get to that point, don't have the courage to take that next step, so they'll just contract. They'll just stay small. To stay within the relationships that are toxic, because the people you're in those relationships or friendships with aren't where you are. You know, you're on completely different vibrational frequencies, but you, because of your lack of courage, you'll force yourself to contract back down because you don't want to. You don't want to lose that relationship, or you want to stay within something that you're familiar with, even if it's toxic and makes you miserable.
It's surprising how many of us will stay there.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of it.
Familiar ground.
Familiar ground. They just contract just to stay within relationships that don't serve them. It's really nonsensical. It makes no sense whatsoever. And I was the same. I lost, organically friendships, and I didn't give it a second thought. I was like, okay, either you catch up with me or you don't. It's,
a friend, I'd always find myself getting into trouble at church. I've served in high positions in church, and I would teach exactly what it says in the scriptures, word for word. But people don't like that because it cuts across their ideas, ideals that they've been taught. And I found myself always getting reprimanded, but to me, I just said no. No, I'm not listening to you. I'll listen to that. I'll listen to the God being within me that's teaching me and speaking to me.
Yeah, and that's exactly, because I found that the calling was too great to stop now, to stay contracted in this. Don't get me wrong, I was tempted a few times, like, hang on a second.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm just going to go back to normality, to what I know, because it's safe.
Slot back in.
Slide back in, yeah.
Comes with your mind, eh?
Absolutely.
It infiltrates. Go back. But you're not. It speaks to you.
Yeah.
Are you sure? It's kind of freaky.
It is kind of freaky.
The thing that's just pulling you back. It all happens in here. You just keep going past it.
I find that when you just be still, when all those trying to drag you back, just be still, find some quiet space, be still and listen, and allow those thoughts, all those conditioned ideas, ideals, philosophies, just let them pass through, just like the clouds passing through the sky. Just let them pass through. Acknowledge them because they're there. So you acknowledge them, but you allow them to pass through. Then you hear that very still, small voice. It'll tell you, keep going. Keep going.
You see, that there is exactly where you find in meditation. The meditation that they taught us was demonic and all that kind of stuff. It's exactly what it is. Because, in a meditation, you'll have thoughts and feelings drift in, and just be aware of them. Don't force them out. Don't, just let them be, and then they'll dissipate. And like you said, with clouds drifting in and out, that's exactly what happens in meditation. And then eventually you become so still.
The sky's clear.
You find that inner light. You're just like, whoa.
But when we find our true selves, which is energy, which is that God being, which is love, perfect love, when we find that within ourselves, then we're able to truly love everyone else.
I keep reverting back to conditioning. It's going to take a while for that to peter out. It's going to take generations and generations, I think, before. Actually, I don't know that kind of conditioning will ever.
It's not meant to, because we think that everyone needs to change. Everyone needs to be this certain way. No. how the majority of people are is how it's meant to be. Otherwise, it wouldn't be. Which will alleviate this kind of idea. It needs to go. Well, when you say, no, it doesn't, well, then that feeling's gone now. And all you have to do is be concerned about yourself.
Yeah.
Is it alleviating within me? Is my own conditioning going away? The world does not change in masses. It changes one by one. And it's only the individual self that can come to that realization. And when enough people get it, now you've got a collective mass. And we don't need to try and change the world. You just try and change yourself. Let the higher consciousness figure it out for everyone else.
To be fair, if you change yourself, the world changes because you see it differently. You perceive it differently because that's what the world is, what you perceive. So if you change yourself, essentially the world changes. But I agree with you, it's not meant to change. Like we are here to learn lessons. We are here to grow, and that's what our human experience is. As spirit having a human experience, we are supposed to learn these lessons, and that's who we are. We are just spirit experiencing itself in human form. So we are meant to learn and grow and teach, but teach to those who are receptive to it, that are open to it. Whereas in the past, I've come up against people that just aren't open to it, and I used to find myself getting frustrated with them. Like, why do you not, family members included, like, why do you not understand? Initially, I thought I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I was like, perhaps you're not at this point yet. Perhaps you're just arriving, you're still arriving, and you'll get here, and I'll meet you when you get here. But they never arrive, and I used to get frustrated by that. And then I told myself, well, they're just not meant to grow. That's their journey. If they're not open to growing, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't force a change.
Yeah. So let it go.
So let it go. Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's about accepting that within yourself. I mean, here's an interesting scenario. My wife is very much Mormon, and I've pulled away from it. Hurt my wife at first because of the conditioning, and she found it very difficult to listen to anything, even though I would teach it to her from the scriptures, from the words of Christ, both from the Bible and the Book of Mormon. Don't want to hear it.
Don't want to hear it.
Don't want to hear it. But now she's come to accept. Now, I haven't changed anything. I'm still your husband. I just see things in a different light now. I don't have to go to church and pay my dues so that I can get to the higher learning school, the temple. I've learnt that the Lord said, know ye not that ye are the temple of God, that you are the temple of God, that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you. He doesn't dwell in the building.
Speaking of churches and buildings, it was a few years ago, and I was watching a documentary on churches and what their original purpose was, and mosques as well, just the way they're constructed, with the roofs and even the colours on the windows. They were built to be like antennas.
Yes, receptors.
Receptors, exactly. See, and even the frequency of the pipe organs they used to use, they don't use them anymore because they're too strong. They're to spirit. So
the
everything
frequency that they're given off.
Exactly.
It's very healing.
Correct. And that comes through. We go through sound healing ceremonies that operate at certain healing frequencies, and these churches and the pipe organs were all for that reason. But that's been stripped away. The true meaning's been stripped away from us. So people are buying into the narrative where there's building now is where I have to go, like you said, to prove myself worthy.
To learn the higher laws.
Yeah, rather than what it was meant to be was if I go into this receptor, I'll receive this sacred vibration that I'm supposed to, because it's amplified in this building.
The building is simply a representation of yourself. That's all it is.
Correct, yeah.
But we get caught up in the building and we start worshipping what's going on in there.
That's right.
But when you understand that the building, the temple, the churches, no, you're not there. You are the church. You are the church. You are the body of Christ. And Christ is your consciousness. and you're the body. So you as individuals are the church of Christ. But we think that we congregate in the chapel, that's the church of Christ. No, that's just the outward example of yourself. Go to the temple, they have the holies of holies. The holies of holies is in you. You have to go into the highest aspects of your own mind. And in there, you communicate with God. Just as it's taught when a prophet goes into the holies of holies in the temple, he's behind a curtain talking with God. Never been in there, but I bet there's nothing but a mirror.
Beautiful. When I was in primary school, so we did religious kind of teachings, but it wasn't particular religion. It was just
Religious instructions.
religious
Used to be
instructions.
called in my day.
And I remember one of my teachers, I can't remember how old I was, but I was very young. And she said, that heaven isn't a place, it's a state of being. And I didn't get it. I thought, geez, you are talking rubbish. Like, heaven is the place, it's paradise, it's up there that, that I'll reach one day.
Yeah.
And now it's making those words still resonate, that it's a state of being, and it really, like, heaven is up here, it's the higher consciousness, and hell is still, it's here. It's what we vibrated. If we have a really low, dense, evil vibration, we're a living hell, essentially.
Sean, we have a saying in Maori, ruku hia te po, kimi hia te marama. In order to find the light or the true self, you must dive into the dark. You must come and have this human experience. Obviously, we couldn't experience in the presence of God what human life is like, what the darkness is like. So we're all sent here to experience at our own choice and our own free will to come and experience what it's like to live in this world of whaokotanga. That's all it is, experiences. And we're not to get hung up on the experiences, learn from it.
And that's exactly what you were saying before, Nab. Like when I questioned the conditioning, if that'll ever change or if society will ever change, and that's what it's not meant to. Like, we are meant to live these lessons and learn from them,
The celestial kingdom is organized perfectly.
Yeah.
Meaning this earth and the systems are perfect the way they are. God is in all things. There is no mistake. But we get caught up on our emotions thinking things need to change because we don't trust in God. We want everything to suit our concepts.
And that's a big part of the human experience. We try and compute and control everything. That's uncontrollable.
Exactly. And that's what institutes, governments, religions, that's what they're all trying to do.
Yeah.
Control everybody.
Yeah.
Because they think if they don't control, there's going to be chaos. Said who? According to who?
And then everyone else, we try and control an outcome. Whereas in reality, we really should just be surrendering and trusting in God, like you said. People don't trust God. Let's talk about the haka, because you guys did a haka on the night. Now, everybody that knows a little tiny bit of Maori culture would the haka is the obvious, But I think the haka is misunderstood because everybody, people would know from the All Blacks and they would see that as a war cry or, but it's
totally misunderstood.
Totally misunderstood.
To the point where-
Absolutely.
Even by Maori.
Yeah.
It's misunderstood.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. What the All Blacks are doing is that they're actually saying to you as the foe, you are worthy to face me. You're a worthy opponent. They're not trying, in the protruding of the tongue and all this sort of stuff.
Yes, because sorry to interrupt, because the protruding of the tongue is like it's almost, people perceive it as a bloodlust sort of thing, like
absolutely.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's what Maori teach. That the protruding of the tongue is all about bloodlust and I'm going to eat you and all the rest of it, which is a load of nonsense. The protruding tongue means the power of my word. What I am saying is true. I believe it. As the scripture says that Nav quotes, the power of life and death is in the tongue. It's what you say.
So true.
Yeah, I can use that to hurt you, but in actual fact, I'm doing more damage to myself by saying it, because that's the energy I'm giving off. So when the tongue comes out, it's got nothing to do with eating anybody or lapping anybody's blood or defiance or anything else. I actually find it so offensive when Maori teach that.
Because it's a low teaching.
Yes, very low.
And it's to portray that we are a savage people, which is not who we are.
No.
We are very sophisticated, in fact, very thoughtful, not savages like we've been portrayed. That's why it's kind of offensive, I find, anyways, because it means we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Mm.
We're unaware of ourselves.
And, when you could Google Maori culture and you'll see a picture of a guy with a protruding tongue, and is it what's the correct? Is it tamoku? Is it moku?
Yeah. Moku.
And that, again, it's to portray that kind of a kind of savage heritage, which I can see why that would be offensive. I mean, because that is actually quite a sacred tattoo to have on your face, yeah. That's my understanding of it anyway.
Awesome, sure.
Yeah, but the haka, coming back to the haka, so there's a lot of stomping on the ground as well with your foot, and that has a meaning in itself as well. So you said with the tongue is, what I speak comes to in existence. I stand firm by it, and the stomping means I stand by what I say. This is
we call it the takahi.
Yep.
But when you look at us, the way that we're standing, from the feet to the knees are the actual walls of your house. From your knees to the hips, that's the roof of your house. And the rest of the torso, head, is the tupuna that stands on top of that marae. Okay? But it's all about yourself. And so one side, takahi, keeps the beat, okay, which is the life side. The left side stays firm on the ground, planted. So it's really, teaching you about yourself, that you must be grounded. Ground yourself. But this keeps me in time with my friend or the men standing next to me.
See, I learned something interesting about haka through that scripture. The power of life and death is in the tongue. And I says to Roland, then why do we do haka that's telling a story? Because usually they're like telling a story, kamate is telling a story. I says, doesn't really make sense to me that we're telling a story, other than could be the lesson, the parable within it. But I thought, in alignment with the power of life and death is in the tongue, what then is haka? But a manifestation, a process of manifestation, to speak into existence who you are with all the energy of your being. What comes out of here is but the birthing of what is conceived in here. So it begins in here. The idea, the concepts of who you are and what reality is conceived in the mind, and then is birthed out through your words, through the tongue. The power of life and death is in the tongue. So whether you speak life or death, whether you speak your belief about who you are, it comes out of the tongue, but it is birthed in here. But with haka, I perceived it that way. Well, haka then is a physical, all cell, all being manifestation of what is actually birthed in the mind, what is conceived in the mind. So I says to Roland, why don't we make a haka that tells us who we are? So that when we do the haka and we teach this haka, that's the energy, the frequency that we're putting out to God. And the haka is simply, God is in me and I am in God. And that's the haka that we did.
It was a powerful haka.
Yeah.
It was extremely powerful. How often are you guys planning to run Kuro Waka?
I would like to do it more because there's so much that we can talk about. And so far, we're only getting up to a certain part of the program because there's new people coming in, so we have to redo it.
Yeah.
So it's figuring out how to teach this other stuff for people who've already come, which I think it can come through doing it more consistently.
Any thoughts on, so you spoke about, when we talked about your work in the prisons, like you would do it over 3 or 4 days, or, 3 days, 4 nights, 4 days, 3 nights?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on doing something like that, like a retreat kind of, Because I think that would be, in terms of absorbing and sharing as much information.
Being able to cover everything that needs to be covered.
Yeah.
Has to be that sort of length.
Yes.
And you're totally immersed in it.
It is hard to teach
really
what we teach in 4 hours.
Yeah.
It's very hard, actually.
Yeah, and then, like you said, if you keep getting new people and have to revisit what you did in the last one, like you make very little headway because you're having to keep coming back.
When I met you at that first wānanga you came to, it's that energy that I feel.
Yeah.
When I saw you in the audience, this guy is a Maori. And you know what the understanding of Maori is?
Could you please share that? Because I found that I didn't know that until you explained it on that night. Could you, just as a closing.
So Maori, Maori, is 2 words. Ma, which means to be clean, sanctified. Ori means a segment of time, whether that segment of time is a minute, a day, a week, a month, a decade. At some time, when you return within yourself, you will be cleansed and sanctified and know who you are.
I just love that. Guys, I absolutely love and respect you, and I really want to thank you guys for sharing what you have. It's thanks again for coming in.
Thank you, Sean.
We appreciate you, Sean. Thank you very much for inviting us in.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to get in touch with Navah or Roland to find out more about Kura Waka and attend a wānanga, you'll find the Instagram link in the description below. See you next time.